Right, good afternoon, gentlemen. I think we're now live, and a welcome to our audience as well. We're very pleased that you could join us today to go through this session. And the focus of the session is all about the whole process of a student placement, and that kind of translates to student internships as well. But mainly today, we're going to focus on your placement experiences. So I want to say a huge thank you and a big welcome to Rehman Shabab, who joined us last year as a placement student, to Victor Koriolov, who again was a placement student with us, and Alex Jones. Today we also have Steven Sutcliffe, who's joining us as a representative of the student placement program. And I'm just going to be asking some questions of you guys, and I'd appreciate your open and honest and unfettered responses to the questions. So we're going to kick off with Alex. And Alex, I'd like to ask you, what would you say overall was the most important benefit to you of your commercial placement?
I think in contrast to how projects have worked with uni, it's experiencing that project life cycle and having more collaboration with other people doing the same stuff as you. And the support that I got from everyone else at the company, that was really good, I guess.
Okay, Stephen, is that something you see with all the students generally?
It is. I think I was just about to write it down, actually. The project life cycle idea, I think it's one of those things that you're just not going to get anywhere else, certainly until you graduate. And even with sort of shorter term placements and things, that the year-long placements that we deal with, certainly, it gives that opportunity to see something through from beginning to end, which I think is one of the huge benefits of doing a placement.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you for that, Stephen. And Victor, I'm going to ask you, it may sound like a little bit of a strange question, but do you think the commercial experience of Green Lemon Company has helped you in terms of your university studies so far this year?
It has. Because Green Lemon Company works with a low-code platform called OutSystems. I've learned OutSystems from scratch because they don't teach us at university. And I'm now actually using that for my final year project to just make my own app and then present it and then talk about what low-code is. So I think that's what I took from my placement. I think that was very, very beneficial. It's because I don't have to spend all this time actually researching all the technologies and how to code stuff. I can actually just use what I learned during my placement and make an app for my final year project. That's really, really good.
Yeah, I'm actually doing the same thing. I'm also using OutSystems for my final year project. So just, I don't know, I don't think I could ever go back to traditional code.
Yeah. I would also say it's kind of made me maybe a little bit lazier in terms of like actually coding, because everything's just so automated. I don't ever feel the need to actually like touch code.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah. Thank you for that, Phyllis. So Stephen, that prompts a question for yourself. Is low code becoming part of the university's narrative and part of its course material, or is it still really focusing on basic coding skills, etc.?
I think in terms of university courses, there's so much to cover that it's difficult to cover the whole range of things. So I think low code is less prevalent, maybe, but I don't want to sort of talk out of turn about that. But I think it's more about the kind of the fundamentals of coding, so things like Java, but also back end and front end development, all that side of things. So I think that's still the case. What's interesting to hear though is if you go into a placement like this, you learn those skills, and perhaps they I imagine they'll be applicable to lots of other jobs, like outside of Green Lemon and things like this as well. But it's just having that experience, and even the people who've spoken so far, it's clear that they've learned so much on placement already. Some have even said it's going to be hard for them to go back to other kinds of coding, but it's that kind of professional insight that you're not really going to get anywhere else. The university, I don't think, can provide that to some extent, because some of it is so niche and specific. And I think that's what placements really excel at doing. And they give you the time to really get involved with that, which is what I'm hearing from the students, which is, it's good to hear.
Thank you, Stephen. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, just one more thing to mention. I think it's something we don't push enough, actually. Two people mentioning their final year project. I think it's an element of the placement that people don't see all the time. So having that ability to come back to your final year and you know exactly what you're going to be doing for your final project, or at least you have a good idea. Not many people are in that position, so it's a huge benefit.
Right. That's very interesting. Thank you for that, Stephen. And Rehman, I'm going to ask you a question now. So has your experience in terms of your placement changed your view of the commercial world?
Well, because we have worked in on different projects and stuff, and university that's quite totally different. And I mean, I've explored lots of different things, especially for example, we use those systems we use, because I was mostly doing the testing stuff.
In Victor, has it changed your view on the commercial world operates?
It's definitely gave me an idea how the commercial world works. In terms of the industry itself, not like just the work experience, but I mean like the actual computing industry, how you go from, being a graduate to working somewhere as a software developer. Because I've never actually had that experience before. That actually reminds me of my friend. We were just talking. I was just talking with my friend, and he asked me, how do you work in the computing industry? Because as a graduate, the all experience you have is just doing assignments and exercises. Yeah. But he asked me like, how are you actually assigned the work? How do you do work? And it got to the point where I was having to actually explain to him the whole agile methodology to him and how you actually work in a workplace in the computing industry. So I think that experience is very, very crucial for like graduates, because as a graduate, you kind of sort of almost expected to have that, but surprisingly, a lot of people don't actually know how to work in the computing industry. So I think that was very, very important.
Okay, thank you, Victor. Actually, that brings me on to a question for Stephen. So it seems like a pretty stupid question, but what is the absolute purpose, the absolute goal of the placement programs that you're involved with at the university?
Well, the key thing would be almost exactly what students have been talking about so far. It's gaining that professional experience. You were talking about the agile process just now. I think it's something I see a lot of on people's CVs even when they're applying for placements. Like, you learn about it on your course, but until you've actually done it on placements, it's very hard to really know the kind of inner workings of that, how it actually works in practice. So the placement, I suppose the key aim is to get that professional experience, not only to enhance your skills, but also so that you have things to talk about on your CV. So wherever you go next, if you've done a placement, once you graduate, you have a whole range of things that you can talk about, technical skills as well as professional skills that you can take into a job interview, into your job application. If you haven't done a placement, you don't have that. You have your degree to talk about, but you're perhaps at a disadvantage, against people who haven't done that placement and haven't got that professional experience. So I think that's the key benefit. And the other thing I would say is, one of the kind of key things about placements is it's a developmental process. There is a developmental curve. You're not expected to be the finished product when you start your placement. You have time to develop and take on more responsibility as you go along, which is another thing that it offers, and is possibly the most important thing about the placement program.
Okay, so reading between the lines in some of what you're saying there, it would definitely give a student a step up when it comes to the very competitive process of winning their first job on leaving university. It's certainly going to help there, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, some students go on to work for the companies that they did placements with, but even if that doesn't happen, and it's not always the case, just having that experience, it does give you a competitive edge when you go into that really quite difficult graduate job market.
Okay, thank you for that. There's certainly something we've noticed is that the number of students applying for the placement process is perhaps not as as high and as vigorous as we would expect. So, question for Victor, Alex, and Rehman: do you think there's more the universities could be doing to promote the placement scheme?
I think our uni had like a careers hub area where they advertised placements, but I don't know if that many people actually knew about it, and I don't know whether it was that heavily advertised to students. And I think they probably could have done with another sort of system or a way to get more recognition and I don't know, more advertisement for different places.
Okay,
Yeah.
Alex, Rehman?
Yeah, I agree with Alex. I mean, for Brighton, it's the same. We have a career, like a special offer. You can go and check your, they can check your CV or cover letter, but it's not very well promoted. So not many students know about it. So I think it just need more promotion.
Okay, Victor?
I mean, in my case, my lecturer sort of also encouraged doing a placement because it was like all of my lecturers, yeah, most of my lecturers, and like Rehman and Alex said, we also have the job fairs. They sort of told me that the benefits of doing a placement, and that sort of actually made me think about doing a placement. And I think we had a like a placement fair where we just sort of went around all the employers and like gave them their details, sort of like got some goodies as well. And then I was also involved in a placement fair myself as with Scott. Was it 2 years ago, I believe. So that was really fun. I think Brighton is doing all it can, but there could be a little bit more. Maybe from the lecturers themselves. I think the lecturers could promote doing a placement. Just talking about it, really.
Okay, Stephen, how do you react to that?
So I think there's a huge amount going on. I mean, particularly this year, there's quite a lot of noise in terms of email communications and getting through to students. It's a problem not only for placements, but for the careers team as a whole, but also for lecturers. It's engaging with students when there's so many other things going on. So it's a big part of what we do. I actually think we've responded to it this year by having more sort of interactive events. I've just come from a workshop where looking at LinkedIn profiles for placement students, for instance. And this kind of interaction, it's not only is it slightly easier in the current circumstances via Microsoft Teams and things, but also it's a way of just engaging the students, actually talking to students, which is what we're trying to do more of. So actually events like this, and particularly things where other students can hear from their peers, from people who've done this kind of thing, I think that's one of the most essential things, as well as from employers as well. I think it can sometimes be not only at the back of people's minds, especially when you have your academic studies to focus on, but it's also it can be quite an intimidating thing sometimes to think, going out and actually working in a professional role. Some people don't have confidence in their skills, so I think that's why it's so important to have events like this, where students can hear from people who've done this and see that it is for them. It's a real possibility, and it can massively help them as well.
And just on that point, Stephen, not specifically talking about us as a company, but do you think there are more that employers can do to help facilitate that journey? Because I do get, the whole principle of students thinking that, the imposter syndrome, or is it something that they know enough about to commit to it, etc. Do you think there's more the employment sector can do?
One thing which we've recommended to companies over the past couple of years, I think job descriptions are quite important in terms of, often I think companies that they put quite a lot of information on their job descriptions to show what students are actually going to be doing in the job. And I think that's often misinterpreted by students reading that job description as, I must have all of these skills. And that can sometimes be a bit off-putting, especially if students in the first place are not too confident about going into these particular roles. So I think having sort of, or at least making it clear on job descriptions that yes, you're not expected to know all of this when you start. Actually,
Yep.
what I hear from companies most of all is we want people with some technical skills and with technical ability, but actually what we're really looking for is enthusiasm and someone who's willing to learn and who's going to fit into our team. And sometimes I don't think that comes across on the job description.
Okay, that makes an awful lot of sense. So I'm just going to break from my thread for a moment and ask a couple of questions from people that are sitting in on the seminar. So Alex, let's start with you. Has the experience that you've been through made it a lot clearer to you what you want to do on completing your studies and going out into the commercial world?
Yeah, I think that question actually quite applies to me quite well, because the original role I applied to with Green Lemon was OutSystems developer, and I did really enjoy using OutSystems as a platform, and it helped my confidence as a coder. But later on, I got some experience working in project management, and that's kind of helped me realize that that's an area that I probably want to go into. So I think, yeah, working on that last project I did in the summer as a project manager, I quite enjoyed that experience and everything that came with it. So yeah, the place was definitely helped open my eyes to different routes I can do in my career. And yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alex. And Rehman, would you like to respond to that one as well?
Yeah, I mean, because as I worked as a tester, and I also did the development side of, I did some development as well. I mean, during my placement, it was because we explored different areas. So now it's more clear for me what I want to do. And even I did AWS as well. So it's a bit more clear what I want to do and what I want to do in the future. So it's a bit more clear for me. While I was in university, I was a bit unsure what I should be doing. Am I doing the right things? But now it's more clear.
Okay, all right, Rehman, thank you for that. And Victor, a question for you. What was the most surprising or unexpected thing you encountered when you went into your placement?
And most unexpected. Not sure. I guess how well I got along with everybody that I worked with.
That's interesting.
I don't know if that was unexpected or surprising. I was kind of well, I just never really worked in the industry before, so I wasn't expecting for everybody to sort of be around my age as well. Young, sort of have the same interests. I was kind of expecting to be like one of the youngest guys there. So that was a little bit of surprise, I guess. What I didn't expect, yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that question.
Okay, all right. And Stephen, from your perspective, do you get really good quality feedback generally from the student placements that you make? Are they quite voluble about their experiences and so on?
Absolutely. I mean, it's quite rare that we get bad feedback, to be honest. Most people, it's not always plain sailing for everyone in their placement, but even for those who don't find it plain sailing, they find there is at least something that they gain, which is of huge value from their placement year. So not only do we get feedback saying this, but we, in normal circumstances, we see the difference in students. They come back to do their final year and they're just so much more confident, both in their technical skills, but also just generally, you can see how it's changed them in that year, just from working in a professional environment. And I think what some of what Victor was saying just there, that's a big part of it, is knowing that you can go to a place and that you are going to get on with people and you can do a job and work in that team. It's a huge confidence booster. And I think there's lots of students who, before they've done a placement, really aren't sure about that.
Yeah. Interesting. The other thing I was going to ask you, Stephen, is we're not seeing a huge number of employers getting involved with the careers areas of the universities. Obviously, the big names do, like the Amexes of this world, American Express and so on, and they do their milk rounds, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not seeing employers taking up the opportunity to work much more closely with the universities to create opportunities for students, not just for placements, but also for permanent employment at their end of their studies.
I think that is the case. Sometimes, I mean, obviously it's different for me because I see a lot of the companies who are doing placements, so I have a kind of skewed view of this. But I am aware of companies who've kind of built their business on placements, on placement students. So they have people who are there now, they have people who were there as placement students and are now there as graduates. And often these companies, they tend to be run by people who graduated from Brighton themselves. They're Brighton alumni. Yep. So I do see that side of it as well. But I think perhaps there's maybe quite a few companies who just aren't aware of the benefits of placements and how you can get all this new knowledge from having someone who's, from the second year of their degree, the kind of skills that they can bring to a role. I'm not sure that employers always are aware of those kind of benefits. And obviously it's difficult circumstances now, but I would say even this year, there's fewer jobs in placements, but there's still a good number of companies who are engaging, particularly in my area, which is computing, because that's one of the ones which has been less affected. But yeah, we would like to see businesses engage more. Interestingly, I saw something recently suggesting that it was going to be smaller to medium-sized companies who would actually be more engaged with placements and graduate schemes and things like this after the pandemic, because they were more adaptable. So it remains to see if that's the case. We hope so anyway.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And one of the questions that, again, I was going to ask yourself, Stephen, if that's okay, is during the placement year, I think the guys had a couple of visits from their tutors and so on. Do you think personally that's enough hands-on in terms of the university understanding how their experience is going and what support they might need, etc.? Twice a year, is that enough?
I think in terms of the actual visits to the company, twice a year, it maybe seems like it's not a lot, but you have to remember that there's potentially 100 to 200 students in the same position, and these are sort of academic tutors who this is quite a small part of their job. So I think it's probably all we have capacity for in terms of physical visits, which obviously aren't happening at the moment. But I would say, as a placements team, we are there to support students throughout their placement as well. If anyone was to have a problem, maybe they felt they were overwhelmed with something they were being asked to do, or it just wasn't working out for them. And we have maybe a couple of people every year who are in that position. Certainly the placements team are there to support them. We will talk that through with them. And if we feel it's necessary, we will create some additional meetings. But yeah, as a standard sort of setup, it is only a couple of visits from the academic tutor. But just to make clear, there are other support services there to help students who are having issues.
Right. Okay, thank you, Stephen. So, Alex, let's ask you a pretty important question. What is the single one piece of advice you'd give to a fellow student thinking about doing a placement year?
In terms of their application, or in terms of actually applying for one?
In terms of the whole thing, the application, etc.
I'd say I think a lot of students go into the idea of a placement knowing no one really knows exactly what they want, but if they have something specific in mind, they're not going to find it. So be quite broad with what you search for. And when you do apply, try and research the companies so you can include things about them in your application to make you stand out. I think that helps quite a lot as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Alex. Yeah. And same question for you, Rehman. One piece of advice to people applying.
I would say don't give up. They shouldn't give up. They should apply for as many placements as they can, and submitting like a cover letter for each specific company and what they are looking for. The cover letter should at least cover those points if they're looking for those kind of skills. I would recommend to not give up and apply for as many placements as you can, and make sure you check. Somebody like Steve should check your CV or cover letter before you submitting it to the company.
Good advice. And Victor, same question.
I would probably just repeat the same thing that Alex and Rehman said, but I'll also add, don't panic, and keep calm.
Yeah, because it got to a stage where I'd applied for like sort of between 15 and 20 different jobs and got lots of rejections. And when you get to that stage, you just like start to wonder whether you're actually going to get anything in the end. But if you, don't panic, something will come your way, as it did for us. So.
No, I find that really interesting. That's quite something that you push through that number of rejections.
Yeah.
And kept going at it until you got your placement. What was the main reason for the rejections, if I may ask?
To be honest, a lot of companies give a generic feedback message, especially larger companies give a very generic response message or just don't reply to you at all. So honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
But
that doesn't sound like a very positive experience, bearing in mind employers are encouraging you to go in the placement program and then giving you inadequate feedback when you do apply. That seems a bit wrong. Well, that leads me to a question for Stephen. How much advice do you offer to employers about how to structure their placement programs?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I suppose many of the companies that we work with, they're quite established in terms of placements, so they have a structure there and it is developed. If we have new companies approach us to talk about, we're interested in offering a placement, then we usually will set up a meeting to discuss that and make sure it's clear that how to advertise it, what the process is, and how it differs from a graduate job or a kind of standard job, that there has to be this kind of learning process or developmental process throughout it. In terms of the feedback, it was really interesting to hear what Alex was saying there, because it's difficult for us to say to companies, if you need to give feedback to your applicants, because some of the companies, they could be huge, they could have hundreds of applicants in some cases, and I think it tends to be the larger companies who give this generic feedback message. We do sort of try and chase that sometimes because it is useful for students, but it is a process where you need some resilience. And it's just hearing what Alex said there. I wish all of my students could hear that, because it is a difficult process, and it's not guaranteed that you get a placement. And some people do stop after 5 or 6 applications, and it's hard for them. One thing I would add, if I may, just people were talking about don't panic and making lots of applications, particularly this year. I think there is this element of panic. Is I want to get a placement and maybe there's fewer jobs and things like this. For me, a key piece of advice to students is it's the quality of the application rather than the quantity. I'm not saying this was the case for any of the students who've just spoken, but I often find people who've made lots of applications and haven't got anywhere, it's often because their CV or their cover letter is not as it should be, essentially. So I'd encourage students to work with their placements team or their careers team to make sure they're along the right lines. But I would also, rather maybe than going for, certainly to start with, going for 10 companies and sending off a generic application, maybe focus in on just 2 companies that you want to go for and do a really tailored, considered application where you've really looked in detail at the role. I think employers like to see that. They can generally spot a generic application a mile off, and it sometimes doesn't benefit you to send off 15 of those.
Yeah, that's a very good piece of advice, and I think that helps to bring together some of the comments that the guys have made, particularly Rehman's comment about a cover letter that's well crafted and relevant to the organisation you're approaching. And yes, you're right. As an employer, a generic application is very easy to spot. And one of the first questions in our interviews is always, tell us about Green Lemon Company. And if people don't know, then that it doesn't exactly get you the tick in the box, that is for sure. So in terms of your sort of day at work, guys, we got a question from one of the audience saying, what does a typical day look like?
I mean, for us, we kind of did, other than at the very start of the placement, we were just like anyone else in our role, any other OutSystems developer, and that it didn't differ for us as it would for someone like, I don't know, like Nunu or Mariano, or well, Mariano's a bit different because he's a tech lead, but anyone else, yeah, I don't think we were treated at all differently because we were on placement compared to someone who was, a full-time developer.
Okay. Victor, any response to that one?
I think the first month of the placement is quite difficult. Well, it's not difficult, but it's challenging, I would say, because we're learning a new platform. We're learning how to work with this new technology, and Green Lemon also pushes developers to get their certifications on that platform, which again also makes you more employable later because that's that certification you'll get to keep as well. But yeah, you're treated as any other developer. After the first month, you may as well work as part of a team on a project. So yeah, it's a pretty quick integration into the team, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Victor. Rehman?
Yeah, I agree with Victor and Alex. You are just being another, team member working on an actual project, and yeah, so you're not like working on something which is not relevant to the company. So you're working on actual live projects and working side by side with the developers.
Okay, thank you, Rehman. So an open question from me: do all of you, including Stephen, do you think it's more important that an employer focuses on skill sets or tries to create a much broader experience of all aspects of the commercial world rather than just, focusing on the code and development, et cetera, et cetera? Do you think it should be a lot broader? Who's going to unmute first?
Can you repeat that question?
So, Victor, do you think it's more important that an employer focuses on delivering a broad range of experiences to a placement student, or should they focus more on the very specific discipline that student is working towards in their studies?
Or I'm
Go on, grab it.
Feeling, a lot of students, even applying for placements at that stage, don't know what they want to do after graduation. So I think a more broad approach does help them open their eyes to different possibilities that they can and different routes they can go down. So I definitely say that the more broad approach.
Okay.
Unless that student is very set on what they want to do.
Sure. Stephen, what's your thoughts on that one?
I would completely agree that a broader experience is beneficial. I mean, in most cases, I think it comes back to those kind of professional or soft skills that students are keen to get and which will be relevant to anything they do in the future. So if they're, as opposed to maybe just coding, if there can be some project management in there of some kind, if there can be something that they start themselves to sort of show they're self-motivated, they're self-starters, all of these kind of skills, and obviously team working is probably a part of everyone's job, whatever placement you're doing. I think having these broader skills is hugely important, and companies want them more and more. I hear from companies regularly, we're not just looking for coders. We need people who can work with our clients, who can work in our team. So I think these are very important. But even on the technical skills side of things, if there's a way that students on placement can move around departments and experience different aspects, as I think Alex said, a lot of students don't know what they want to do, and experiencing all different sides, maybe even the kind of business aspects of a role, can be extremely useful in helping them decide what it is they want to go on and do, as well as building those skills at the same time.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. A couple of questions from the audience. So, question for the students: do you feel that going back to uni after the placement was a step backwards? Did you just want to carry on working commercially?
I definitely say in some ways, yes. There are obviously parts of student life that I really enjoy, and going back to that has been great. But yeah, there's pros and cons to both being a student and being in the working environment, and especially being at Green Lemon, was quite an enjoyable experience for me. So yeah, I don't know, those bits I miss from it. So
Okay, Victor.
For me, I really did want to carry on working, but I thought to myself that I kind of just need to go back, finish my degree, and then start working. Because if I just carried on working into third for a year or something else, I'd probably just never finish my degree. And I just saw that happening. So I thought, no, I need to go back. I need to finish my degree, and then I'll go back and work as fully qualified developer. But also about the uni life, because all of my mates, most of my mates, are on like 3-year courses. If you go when you go on your placement, you're doing a 4-year course because you're doing a sandwich degree then. So when you go back, most of your mates or all of your mates might have been graduated by now and left the town. So for myself, I think I wasn't really going back to much of a uni life, especially during a pandemic. But yeah, but I think it's still important to actually go back and finish your degree, even though you think it'd be a better idea to still carry on working and actually being in the workplace and earning money. I think you still need that degree, I think, just to, if you want to go somewhere else.
Okay. Thank you, Victor. Same question for you, Rehman.
Yeah, same as Victor and Alex. I wanted to keep working for Green Lemon Company as it was amazing working for them, and every day I was learning something new. But then I thought I would finish my degree. If I keep deferring it, then I might, as Victor said, I might just keep working and then never finish my university. So
yeah, interesting. Just so Stephen is aware, because I want to make sure we keep the university on side. Our policy at Green Lemon Company, and I'm sure it's the same with all the employers that take placement students, is that we won't do anything to discourage a student from returning to university to finish the degree. So we're very happy to, for the right individuals, grant unconditional offers of contract when they finish, but we wouldn't offer an employment contract to a student who's supposed to be going back to university.
We appreciate that, Matt. We do. Not all companies are that way, and I understand from the student perspective that actually I think it shows the real impact that a placement has. That it feels so different to go back into your final year, and there is this temptation to I could just keep working and keep earning, and I feel like it is a step back. But ultimately, you need your degree. I hope I'm not just being biased saying that because I work for a university, but you need the degree. Lots of jobs out there eventually are going to say, if you don't have a degree, you can't come and work for us, whether that's right or wrong. So it is important. But and I do take Victor's point as well about there are these sacrifices to be made. Like if you have an additional year to your degree, essentially, then you might lose contact with some of those people or they graduate without you. So it can be quite a difficult process. But I'm hoping Victor now feels like, and the rest of the students hopefully feel they made the right choice in that. I'm not sure people would go back and say, well, I'd rather not do a placement and have stayed with my friends. Maybe not, I don't know. But I think the payoff is worth it in the end.
No, yeah, it's definitely worth it, yeah.
Yes.
Good. And another question from the audience, and feel free to answer this however you like. The question is, what was the best and the worst part of working for Green Lemon Company?
I would answer this first. I think the best part was the flexible hours, because I've never worked for a company with flexible hours before, and I think that was a very interesting approach, because developers tend to be the kind of people that stay up late. We'd go to sleep, then wake up with an idea to solve a solution, and then do programming during midnight. So I think the core hours for Green Lemon Company is, you come in before 10 o'clock, and then you can leave anytime after 4 o'clock. But then you have to make up those hours during the week, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if there was some emergency, or if you're not just feeling very well, or you just had like a really late night, and you can come into work later, because you have that option. But I really enjoyed the flexibility. I think that really actually made me more motivated as well. Like I didn't have a fixed hours to work, like from nine till 5. I actually, I was more happy to actually do some overtime and stay in the office till like 7 or 8. Because I would just be so invested into my project that I just felt like, I have that flexibility, so I could just work less hours the next day or just take some extra holiday. But yeah, I thought that was the best part about working for Green Lemon, and also the people at Green Lemon. I think the people are a big part of it as well, because we're all treated as a big family. I would say, like, we're not just co-workers. I think we're all friends as well. So yeah, I don't know about the worst part. I don't have any negatives to say, honestly.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. I feel like rapidly moving on to the next question so we don't get any negatives out, but there must be some. Alex, how about you?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Victor about the flexible hours being a really good part of working with Green Lemon. I'd also say that the working environment we had, especially when we were in the office and the spaces, and all the support I could get, like if I was struggling with something, then I could just go over to like Luis or Mariano or Jose, and then just ask for some support or help on what I was working with, and they'd be happy to give it. Obviously, if one of them was busy, then I'd go to another one.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the worst part. Is COVID like a cop-out answer?
Yeah, that's a good cop. I'll go with that one.
Yeah, because obviously it stopped us working in the office, which I really enjoyed. So yeah.
Made all our lives very difficult. And Rehman, anything from yourself?
Yes, and as Alex, the best part for me was working with some of the best developers, I experienced and work with like the project managers, the QA side, the developer side, so I explore different sides. So that was, I would say, the best part. And the worst part was I wanted to spend more time, with the colleagues and with the developers, but due to COVID, I couldn't. So that would be the worst part. I want to spend more time with them. Face to face.
Yeah, I'm personally, I'm a little bit afraid that this is also the future of the industry, is that with the COVID pandemic, a lot of companies in the industry have realized they don't actually need offices to continue working. And I'm sort of still kind of desire that contact with colleagues. So actually I have a question for Matt. Like, Matt, do you have any plans on like actually having like maybe like a little office where we can still come in and see someone else, or just have that in-person interaction in the future? Because the way things are looking, I think in computing industry, like you could hire a developer in a different country in a different time zone and they could still do the job. It doesn't matter. But I think it's still important to actually have that interaction with people.
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and obviously it's a question that's been on our minds since March last year. There's no question of it, as far as we're concerned, is the world has changed and the way in which we work has changed, and that's likely to go on for a while. So we've got to be very conscious of two things. First of all, the impact of losing that social contact, which is really important that we all enjoy, and also the impact of the globalization of resource to work on projects. So if in the first instance, if you take placement students joining us, which has relevance to what we're discussing today, I think it'd be very difficult for a placement student to come into an entirely remote environment, because you do need that first month or so of getting intimate with the business and its processes, its procedures, its purpose, etc. And I think that's a very difficult thing to do remotely. Secondly, onboarding people that work in other countries. My big concern with that is they don't immediately become part of the family, part of the team, and will always feel like a third party outplaced person. And we've got to resolve those challenges. And I think it's a twofold answer. First of all, we've got to get extremely good at the way we use digital means to communicate with each other informally and formally. And I think we're starting to do that as a business. But the second thing is, I think what we'll establish is a small hub locally, probably in Brighton, which we use informally to onboard new members of staff, to meet up socially, etc. But it will not be on that same sort of corporate office style of approach. It's going to be different. And there are challenges with that. So some people are quite happily working away in isolation. Other people really do miss that get round the table with a coffee and thrash a problem out. And we've got to be flexible enough as an organization to accommodate both ways of working that people potentially have. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Matt.
Okay, you're welcome. Stephen, we've got a few minutes left. I'd like to throw it open to you. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but are there questions you would like to ask our 3 placement students in respect of what your department does and what your department delivers?
Yeah, there's one that I've seen in the Q&A. I don't think it's been asked yet. It's from Mariano, and Mariano was asking, would you advise your fellow students to do a placement year or to try and finish their degree as quickly as possible? I would like to put that to the students because it's something I hear a lot of. I think students, particularly now, for some reason, they think I just need to finish my degree and then I'll worry about getting a job. I would like to hear from the students how they felt about that.
I would say 100% do your placement, because it will show your future employers that you have the industrial experience, and that's, I think, as we said before, it will give you an edge in a very competitive market. So that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with Victor, because it will make you stand out if you do placement, and it will give you a better understanding and a good idea for your final year project as well. And then, for example, we use agile methodologies, and then you can implement same and your final year project, and yeah, so you can have like a better final year project.
Thank you. I was hoping that would be the answer, but I think it is a real concern for some people. Is I just want to finish my degree and start earning, and I try and explain it in terms of actually you are starting your career actually just a year earlier, and okay, you have that maybe hurdle to cross when you come back to your final year, but you gain so much from starting a professional career a year earlier on your placement. So thank you for your answers on that. There was one other question I just wanted to ask. In terms of the placements team and your experience, either with the University of Brighton placements team or your own team or career service, is there anything that you feel would have helped or could have been improved about your experience of applying for placements and looking for placements? I'd appreciate just you being as honest as possible about this.
The experience was generally really good. I think. Yeah, I don't have any complaints. I've had a lot of support from yourself with my CV as well. So that was really, really good. You know, you helped me write my cover letters, write my CV. So that was influential. I was able to get a placement, of course. But yeah, I think Brighton Uni is doing very well in terms of placements, like placement support.
Were you all aware of placements? I mean, I know for the Brighton students, we come in and we speak to you at the start of the second year. Did you feel it was enough on your radar, perhaps?
Not initially, because I didn't sign up for a sandwich degree. Then eventually I was like, realized, hey, I actually kind of do want to do a placement, so I did a placement. But I actually did some work as a student ambassador in my first and second year, and I realized that actually Brighton Uni is kind of getting a reputation of being sort of known for its ties to the industry. So a lot of students are actually coming to Brighton because of how good they are with placements and stuff like that. So I think that was really cool.
Great.
Okay.
Do I have time for one more question, Matt?
Of course, Stephen, be my guest.
I just wanted to ask of the three of you who were on placement there, was there a particular bit of experience or some skill that you had, do you think, that you felt, and maybe Matt can help with this as well, that you felt got you onto your placement? Was there something that you're really pleased that you did, maybe in your first year, maybe previous to that, that you think helped you to get into the job?
I was told in my interview that my CV was really good, and I'm trying to remember why. But I think it was a good variation of soft skills and also the way that you write about yourself. As well, you kind of want to make yourself seem like more of a person than a coding machine. And I think that's quite important. Definitely.
Okay, I'm happy to come back to you on that one, Stephen. It's quite interesting for us. So we interviewed 4 graduates and we took on all 4. Partly that's because they got through the screening process really, really well. And the cover letters and the quality of the CVs certainly did that. Hence the 4 guys getting in front of us. But they were all successful at interview for exactly the same reason. They had done their homework on us as a business, and they were quite obviously open to learn. And that's all we ask for in a placement student. We don't expect students to come in and deliver against a billing project. That'd be ridiculous. We just expect them to be sponges and enjoy the experience, which proved out to be correct with the 4 of them.
That's really useful to hear, because I think students just aren't aware of that. I think that they just need to be enthusiastic and be sponges, as you say. I think that's so important for students to hear. So thank you. Very
welcome. Right, everybody, we've overrun a little bit, so it just remains for me to say a huge thank you on behalf of Greenham and Company, all our panelists, all the people listening in for joining us today. We'll make sure the video is available for you to share, which is the point of today's exercise. And good luck with the studies. And Stephen, good luck with placing all those enthusiastic sponge-like students.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.